This sitting is resumed. Yeah, you know.
The acquisition by the state of the parcel of land situated at Lot 5A, Waterford, in the parish of St. Michael, in this island for the public purpose, namely the construction of a district hospital.
Honourable member for St. George South.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to introduce this resolution to the chamber that speaks to compulsory acquisition of land at Lot 5 Waterford. But Mr. Speaker, there is a second resolution that speaks to the sale of Lot 13, Lower Estate in St. Michael, some 6 acres of land to as strong holdings, state land, and I wish to treat both of them in a cognate debate because they are inextricably linked to each other.
The question is that order 6 and 7 be debated as a cognate debate. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. 6 and 7 will be done as a cognate debate.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for your indulgence. Firstly, Mr. Speaker, resolution pertaining to the compulsory acquisition of land at Waterford, St. Michael, comprising some 3.2 acres of land, 1.303 hectares of land for the construction of a new geriatric hospital is before the chamber. In addition, Mr. Speaker, while we as a government sought to acquire this land from the then Caribbean Consulting Limited, which is now trading as Strong Holdings, the said Caribbean Consulting Limited were seeking to acquire some 6 acres of land owned by the Crown at Lot 13 Lower Estate in St. Michael. And as fate may have it, a proposed land swap ensued with a view to hasten not only the sale of the land to Ed Strong, who's in the commercial and retail real estate business, but hasten to acquire Lot 5, 5A Waterford, for the purpose of building a new geriatric hospital. And Mr. Speaker, they're inextricably linked, I said earlier, but I wish to focus my attention, Mr. Speaker, for the next 5 to 10 minutes on the new geriatric hospital. Currently, Mr. Speaker, this government caters, we have some 4 facilities, elderly care facilities across Barbados, in St. Thomas, St. Philip, St. Lucie, and of course, the Beckles Road facility named the Geriatric Hospital. And this has been a facility that we thought and saw fit to abandon because the whole aspect of fit for use came into question. And there were many challenges with the current geriatric hospital. And it was necessary also, Mr. Speaker and members of this Lord Chamber, based on the proximity of the current Beckles Road facility, geriatric hospital, when tropical weather systems approach this small, beautiful island we call our home, we were forced at times to relocate those elderly persons who found a place that they call their home in the geriatric hospital and a place where they go for care. And Mr. Speaker, some of the challenges that we met at the geriatric hospital, the existing geriatric hospital, infrastructural issues, electrical issues, functioning of equipment, the fact that we have outdated the electrical systems, some of what we have seen in the housing stock across Barbados, and the same way that we have undertaken at the National Housing Corporation, the whole electrical upgrade project. We wish that that was the only aspect of the geriatric hospital that we had to fix. But certainly, when the cost-benefit analysis was done, it was worth the while to find a suitable location, and some of the criteria identified for a new geriatric location was a site, critical, more inland, centrally located, and having extensive grounds, room for the elderly to engage in therapy and engage in relaxation, not only to be housed in a room daily. And we saw this piece of land. It sits acutely next to the botanical gardens as the best place. So if you're traveling from Waterford heading north, from that school in Waterford, what's the name of the school again? I think what's the name of that school? Member can help me with the name of that school situated in Waterford? Some members say they can't remember. Someone said, okay, in the bottom, up and on, okay, sorry, Combermere. When you're heading...
But I remember you asking about the school, but are you sure that you watched Super Bowl halftime? I am sure. I think I saw a photograph of you enjoying the halftime show, right? Of the 57th Super Bowl. And I'm sure that you were glued to the television set, watching the performance of a person the national hero who was school at that same school who you can't remember the name. Continue on, remember.
Thank you for reminding me, Mr. Speaker. And certainly the memory is clear now. Vividly clear, pellucidly clear, all the clouds have been removed. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. But if you travel north, heading north from the Combermere School along Waterford Road, and as you approach the roundabout on your right and you look east, it's that plot of land there, which is the secondary phase of the botanical garden. We recognize the botanical garden as you travel north along Waterford Road. On the western side is the primary phase, the first phase. But the second phase of the botanical garden, this plot of land sits acutely adjoining that lovely place we call the Botanical Garden. And I want to thank, the ministers, past and present ministers of the environment, and those responsible for beautifying that lovely place we call the Botanical Garden. It's indeed a place that we can go for relaxation, solace, and I'm certain that the elderly care will enjoy being housed at such a location. But, Mr. Speaker, the importance of access to and upgraded geriatric facilities or elderly care facilities cannot be underscored. In this country, it is predicted that Barbados' elderly population will move from a current 12% of total population to some 20% of the total population by the year 2025. And it is also anticipated that the need for elderly care will increase as the population continues to trend, particularly in that category of age group 65 and over. And we recognize this trend is particularly not only worrisome, but has attracted the work of the member for St. Michael South and, of course, the member for St. Thomas, who held those responsibility, held and hold the responsibility for elderly care in this country. And it also sits acutely this acquisition while the Ministry of People's Empowerment and Elder Affairs has responsibility for the elderly care in this country. This project sits acutely with the Ministry of Health and Wellness, who has developed a comprehensive program for the care of the elderly that speaks to not only reform and enhancement of institutional care, but it speaks to community and home care and rehabilitation services. So this is a multi-pronged approach to caring for our elderly population. And Mr. Speaker, we said earlier that this country has a number of public residential care institutions for the elderly, but also the private sector has a great number of elderly care facilities in this country. And taking this into consideration, Mr. Speaker, the age limit, the increasing number of persons who are over the age of 65, 12% currently, and trending. The member for St. Michael South, he can tell you that the statistics show they're trending towards 20%, but he may be able to show that it is trending even higher than 20% of the population. So there's a need not only for geriatric care in this country, but there's also a need for families to engage private sector entities. There's a need for community care. There's also a need for rehabilitation. We recognize, sir, in this country, there are a number of persons living with dementia, Alzheimer's. These are some of the, what I call, sicknesses that have crept into our society. Not that they're not known before, but we are seeing an increased number. And I'm wondering what is causing that. Perhaps the member for St. Michael South can shed some light during his presentation. But it is a worrying trend. I have it within my family, and I'm hoping that the therapy and the types of medicine and foods that are recommended today, the fact that we are seeing an increase, the Ministry of Health will do its utmost best to address it, not only through rehabilitation, but prevention methods and methodologies. So, Mr. Speaker, we also need to recognize that the time has come where there's a need for greater, not only geriatric facilities, and I will speak to the geriatric facility, the proposed geriatric facility shortly, because we have a bigger problem in this country. We can build a geriatric facility, we will build one, that will house some 300 patients, so have 300 beds in the first phase. And in the second phase, we will build a facility that will adjoin the phase 1 facility that will house 108 beds. So we are moving from currently housing at Beckles Road some 244 persons with 278 beds to 400 beds. You know, this morning, Mr. Speaker, I sat and I listened to members during the debate that came before this one, and I was impressed. Not only was I impressed with the quality of speeches, but I was impressed with the fact that both the member for Christchurch East Central and the member for St. Michael South Central made it pellucidly clear that when you borrow money, you don't borrow money just to pay bills, but you borrow money to engage in infrastructural improvement. And coming on the heels of their excellent erudite presentations, we have a resolution that speaks to investing some $100 million in a geriatric facility that will generate employment levels of 300, that will staff some 475 persons in the first instance in phase 1, and then will provide, when we have completed phase 2, a total of 585 employment opportunities for ordinary Barbadians. Over a 3-shift system, operating in a 3-shift system. And this pleases my heart, Mr. Speaker and members of this chamber. It will be a hospital with a dynamic care model that partners with families to provide short or long-term hospital beds, to provide day care, to provide respite facilities, and a place where you can leave your elderly temporarily if a break is needed. And I would get into the details of what will be offered there shortly. But across Barbados, the fact that our population, our over 65 population, is increasing, it tells us that persons are living longer. It also tells us too that we as younger people, and I want to compliment the member for St. Thomas, who has started some advocacy in her constituency on elderly care. I want to congratulate her in this Lord Chamber, because what this speaks to, and I will start it in St. George South as well, so I'm signaling to the people of St. George South, look who either for the member for St. Michael South or the member for St. Thomas, or both of them, coming to St. George to speak to us on caring for the elderly. Because I find at our QEH, and I hear it, I live it daily, I hear the concerns as I lie down, I hear the concerns as I wake up, I hear the concerns as I shower, I hear the concerns as I get dressed on a daily basis with respect to how families are leaving the elderly ones, their grandparents and their parents who are over 65 at the QEH, who will go there for some form of care, and they're leaving them for months and months and years in that institution. And, Mr. Speaker, while this debate speaks to land acquisition, and I'm certainly not the Minister of People's Empowerment, and I know he will have his say, but it worries me. I have parents, 87, well, my dad will be 87 this year, yes, July. And my mom is 80, she'll be 81 this year. If the Lord spare their lives. And I, for one bit, never thought of leaving my parents with anyone. I know we have hectic schedules and sometimes we may want to have our parents in good daycare facilities. And that is what it is about. But to leave your parents, abandon your parents and your grandparents for months and years, that is not what this society is about. We have to respect our elderly. This country we call our own, Barbados, this was built on the work of our great-grandparents, our forefathers and our parents, who toiled long and hard. When we had a sugar industry, some of us, well, not you, member for Christchurch, but I don't think you had any parents that toiled long and hard in the field. That's my friend, member for Christchurch West, so we can share that. But all of us were not fortunate to grow up in money, but we know some of our grandparents and our forefathers, grandfathers, toiled the plantations. They worked hard to make this country what it is today. And we're operating on the backs of the hard work of those elderly persons. And the most we can do, or the least we can do, is to have respect for them. And that is why, member for St. Michael South, you have one of the best ministries. We know all are important, but looking after the elderly is a special endeavor that we all should be proud of, and we all should be proud to have parents that live so long. We all are not fortunate. I have 5 close friends, and I'm the only one in that group. We all went to that institution in St. John, surrounded by those lovely fields. And I'm the only one with parents alive. And we gather at Christmas, and we sit and we reminisce. And they say to me, you are a fortunate man. And I'm indeed blessed. That even this evening, as I travel to St. George to see them, briefly, it's Valentine's, it's the day of love. And we have to spread that love to our elderly. And I will go and see my parents. And I will ask each and every one of you to take some special time today to at least pick up your phone and say something to your parents or your grandparents or your aunts and your uncle. Tell them how much you love them and appreciate what they have done, not only for you, but for this country. And as I look around, I know very well that most of us in here, all of us in here, we have elderly people that we can pick up a phone and call. And I stood with my dear friend from St. Michael East, his dearly departed mother, Ruby. And I stood with him. He cried and I cried. Because when he looked into the mirror, he see Ruby, what she has done for him, and how she has allowed him to live past 70, and to be someone who has contributed significantly to the development of this nation. So while this debate is about land acquisition to build a 408-room geriatric hospital, we have a lot of work to do in this country as young people, the private sector, and government has started the work. Not only within the Ministry of People's Empowerment, but look at us, agriculture. Look at the Ministry of Transport Works and Water Resources. The buses that we acquire, the electric buses. We acquire electric buses. Remember for St. Michael Southeast, how many of them have the disability component and can cater to the elderly? All of them. All of them. Look at agriculture. What we are doing in the Ministry of Agriculture, we are seeking to provide food, grow food. The food that made these elderly people who they are and made us the ground food. The yams, the potatoes, we are seeking, the member for St. Philip South, he's seeking to become self-sufficient in root crop production, to put this country in a position that we can become self-sufficient in root crop production. The yams and the addos and those types of food. That is what made our elderly people. That is what allowed Luther Valerie Sutherland to live to 86 and moving on. That is what has allowed Delight Bradshaw to live to over 70 years and moving on. 81 now. And all of your parents that are alive. So, Mr. Speaker, while this resolution, like I said, speaks to the acquisition of lands, there is a lot more that we have done that I can speak to. The home health program, I want to congratulate this government. We engage in a home health program. The create community health worker programs that provide clinical and social support in homes. And then I come home to my ministry, the Ministry of Housing, that looks after the housing for the vulnerable. So this government, across sectors, continue to champion the cause for the elderly in this country, because we recognize we are Trojans. The member for Christchurch West Central called us Trojans for the elderly. And as you look on your TV day by day, you see a handsome young man from St. Michael's South, but he's not just on television because he's handsome, but he's there telling you, this country, what is happening as a government, what we are doing as a government to cater to the vulnerable, to the elderly, how we are dealing with welfare as we move into and transition, as these elderly persons increase in population. The member for Christchurch West Central said he wants to speak next, but I don't think he can speak before the member for St. Michael's South. I know the member for Christchurch West Central, he loves the elderly in different forms. In different forms, if I may say. But indeed, he looks after the elderly. They look after him too. And I know he's passionate about this debate because he came in from lunch 20 minutes before lunch finished. And he was asking me if it is possible for him to lead the debate. So, Mr. Speaker, we are here speaking about a facility that will take some 2 years to build. 18 months to 2 years to build. But, Mr. Speaker, during this time, you'll see work being done on a main hospital building, which is 3 stories. Work will be done to construct a chapel, which is 1 story, a guard hut, a generator building, central plant building, potable water storage tanks and associated pump rooms, 180 parking spaces, fire and exercise lanes, water treatment systems, including treatment plant, ponds and lagoons. And the main hospital, I said earlier, will have a 300-bed capacity, including 1 isolation ward and some quarantine wards. It will also have 10 day rooms and a lounge. 1 day room for every 2 wards. 1 day room for every 2 wards. 6 treatment rooms, 2 per floor. There are 3 levels, 2 treatment rooms per floor. A rehab unit, including physiotherapy, a therapeutic pool, occupational therapy, speech therapy, podiatry. These are some of the areas. So this is not just the ancient 1844 geriatric hospital that we built. That was constructed in 1884. 1884. See why we are borrowing money, member for Christchurch East Central? See our investment of 100 million. It is 25 million per 100 bed we are investing in. And some persons may ask, why are we not building a larger facility? I just explained that the geriatric hospital will not be built, the new geriatric hospital will not be built to house all the elderly people in this country. We can't do that. Where we can get the money from? This is costing 100 million, member for Christchurch East Central. Thank you for the hard work. Member for Christchurch, for St. Michael's South Central, you started this work too. So when persons ask the question, why we can build a hospital with more beds? Because we are trying to change the culture of this country, how we cater to the elderly, because they are living longer. We have to have more community care facilities for the elderly, more private care facilities for the elderly. Persons living in their homes, eating differently as elderly people, and before they reach that age, they become conscious that they're living longer and they take to their health in a more serious way. So we can't build 6 geriatric hospitals, 1,000 beds each. That's not possible. Where are we going to get the money from? But we recognize that the plant we have that was built in 1884 is outdated. It's ancient. It's not fit for purpose, not fit for use, the location. And we are building a new facility in a better location. This will have a daycare unit, kitchen department, laundry department, pharmacy, central sterile supply department. It will also have a maintenance department, stores to house, warehouses, staff offices, and accommodation for staff. This is what we are borrowing money to do, to modernize Barbados, to build our infrastructure, to provide jobs, to boost our economy, so that the growth that is projected by the member for St. Michael, for Christchurch, Essential, and our Prime Minister, so that the growth that is projected over the next 2 to 3 years, we can realize we are not just borrowing money willy-nilly. $100 million, $25 million per 100 beds will be invested in this geriatric hospital. And Mr. Speaker, while there are other improvements that will come to places like Gordon Cummins and the geriatric hospital in St. Philip and in St. Lucie, this is an immediate need. This is required. And I'm being told the member for Christchurch West will have his say to tell us when there will be groundbreaking, because this is my senior minister who's responsible for infrastructure, and he knows this project better than any one of us from an infrastructural standpoint. But I'm being told that we'll break ground shortly. I will leave him to tell you when. But at the end of the day, within 2 years, Barbados will become modern in terms of boasting of a modern facility that will cater to the elderly people. I end by sending a message to the private sector. Government creates an enabling environment in this country. Everything cannot be done by this government. And while I'm not critical of the private sector, I worked in the private sector and I had a say in the growth of this economy. I produced cement for 17 long years. And we exported, when you look at our exports, over that period, you see that cement was one of the main export commodities in this country, and still is. So for me, my message to the private sector, there are the areas of not only commerce, but the areas of social care that we need to invest in. And this country is very liquid in the private sector. The member for Christchurch West will tell you there's a lot of liquidity floating around. And I urge that some of this liquidity be used, even if there's a fee to be charged to families, to help government build out the elderly care facilities across this landscape, so that we can cater to more elderly persons. And my final word goes to families, including my own. And we have recognized that persons are living longer. And we have recognized that we have a duty of care as a people to our elderly population. And whereas some of these persons are being left at QEH for years and years without any of their family members looking back at them. And whereas that constitutes an abandonment to persons who carry you for 9 months and carry your mother and family for 9 months, I'm calling on families to see the need to look after the elderly within the family unit. I don't see government as the place of refuge or the place where we can throw and dump our elderly people. and asks us to look after them. We indeed have policies in place, and we are showing this country, and we are showing the region, and we are showing the world that we care about our elderly population. And I'm asking families to be more supportive of their mothers and grandmothers and their aunts and uncles. And I'm also asking that the same way we can take children and adopt children into our homes and raise them, there are a lot of elderly persons who are out there that need care. And I'm calling on Barbadians and the private sector to invest some of the money and the liquidity across Barbados, join with government as we seek to make Barbados the best place for our elderly population to grow old and to live in. I'm calling on you to do better and to help government to make Barbados the best place for old people to live, to retire, to do business, and indeed to enjoy a good life. With those few words, Mr. Speaker, I beg that these resolutions now pass.
Honourable members, the mic yourself.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, sir. I rise to support, obviously, the work being done in the Ministry of Housing, being led quite ably by the Minister of Housing and the member for St. George South. Sir, as Minister responsible for the elderly in this country, I would naturally wish to lend my voice to this discussion, even though I choose today to do so very briefly. So I also must speak on this debate because obviously Beckersfield, from whence the old geriatric hospital cometh, is also in St. Michael South, and that therefore has other implications and consequences for me. So I begin this debate, sir, as I do many others, sir, remembering, as most of us will at some point, the people who really matter to us, who, many of them, sir, do not have name, they are not known, they're not in any book, they are not written about, sir, they are engraved, probably not on stone, most of them too poor to have gravestones, but engraved, sir, in our hearts, and that many of us have people in our communities, elderly persons, that we grew up around, that we knew as boys and as girls, that have contributed in one way or the other to us being here. So I carry values now that were given to me by my mother, given to her by her mother, and by her mother's mother. That is how generations continue. In fact, sir, in Africa, as you would know, sir, the griots, sir, carry by telling story. That's how culture is passed on from one generation to the other. And inherent in that is the respect, sir, that comes along with it. There is a concern, obviously, that I now have, sir, that we are losing a lot of the old ways. And as a consequence, sir, we are now seeing some of these things manifesting in Barbadian society. But that is a conversation for another time. I just wish, sir, on behalf of all of those who were born into relative struggle, to thank those who have helped us. And I want to thank, sir, on behalf of those who even weren't born into struggle, sir, because all of us were shaped along the way by somebody else, sir. Many of us were born, I was born in my house, in a little house in my Lordsill, delivered at home by the hands of an older person, sir. And I want to thank those hands and the many hands in this country, sir, that have done yeoman work on behalf of a country, sir, that is forever going to be a very grateful nation. It is very difficult, though, to come to this legislation, sir, to this conversation, sir, and not to speak about some of the associated issues. And while I do not wish to speak for very long, because I do know I will have my chance very soon, when we bring the elderly legislation that is being worked on, I will soon be before this House. I do wish to share a few thoughts, sir. There is a concern by some that perhaps this geriatric hospital is costing a lot of money, and that perhaps the government is spending too much money when they add up on caring for the elderly. Sir, the cost of not doing it I think is beyond the imagination of all of us. Not only because our society is aging at an extremely rapid rate, sir, and it becomes obviously the thing to do, because all of us will become old very soon, sir, and it is obviously the thing to do. But it is so disrespectful, I think, for us to get in here and weigh in dollars and cents, whether the bills are new or old bills, about how much value you should assign to helping the old people, sir, who built this country, literally built this country. And now we're having a debate about whether we should spend money on the geriatric hospital or not, sir. That is anathema to me, to be honest. And so, sir, I just want to begin by saying that the cost of not doing this is a lot more in all terms than the cost of us deciding to do it. We have an aging population, sir. The world itself is aging. There is anticipated, sir, that by 2025, which is just now, 1.2 billion people in the world will be over 60. 1.2 billion. It is anticipated that 75% of these older people will be in developing countries like Barbados. And Barbados is in itself, sir, an aging country, even an outlier for developing countries. So even though they're aging faster, Barbados is aging faster than the average country that is already aging fast. And we therefore have to bring to this parliament, sir, serious conversations about how we are going to be able to cater to this group. And that those of us who think that this is a conversation for only a minister of people empowerment today, or a minister of health, or a minister of housing, might find themselves out of sync with the reality. The minister of environment too, but for different reasons. But they might find themselves, sir, out of sync with reality. This is a conversation for all of us, sir. And if I want to focus very quickly on health, our healthcare system, as is the case for most developing countries, sir, is pretty much overburdened. I mean, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to know this. The healthcare system is challenged. It is challenged in the Caribbean. It is challenged in the Pacific. It is challenged even in developed countries, sir. Because modern medicine have now made it so that people know when they have a common cold, they go to the hospital. If you have a pain in your joints, you go to the hospital. And if you consider that older people are more likely to have these issues and more of us are getting older, then more people will go to the hospital. The burden on the hospital today has to be greater than the burden on the hospital 25 years ago. It has to be. And therefore, sir, that is what we have to be able to address. It's already overburdened. And sir, we are dealing, as you also know, with a lot of chronic diseases. Barbados has a population, sir. I was speaking at our elderly consultation on Sunday, and we were having a conversation, sir, but for most of us, if we go to these street fairs or regular fairs and they're doing health testing, most people, you ask them, when they go and they get the cholesterol checked, they get the pressure checked, they may get the level of the sugar in the blood, the diabetic level checked, sir. Somebody walking away more than likely with at least one. Many of us with two, and some of us with all three. And sir, it is because, and I am not talking about at 65 now, I'm talking about young people. And if your health is at risk when you are young, then it stands to reason that, of course, it's going to be more at risk when you are older. And sir, we have to deal with this thing, sir, as a chronic issue facing all of us, even our younger people, sir. And commensurate with that, sir, the challenges of the last few years, sir, I think about COVID. And I think people think that COVID perhaps is almost over, and it is in many ways, but the burden that has left on the psyche of so many people. Sir, for most old people during COVID, it was a lonely experience. I am now in my ministry trying to find a way, sir, to get older people to try to come back out in a way that is safe to socialize, sir, because socializing and socialization is a critical part of older people being able to enjoy their old age. And COVID, sir, has cheated older people of that. Sir, COVID too, I had a daughter during COVID. But I know that for the first 2 years of her life, she hardly knew anybody else but me and her mother. because that cheated her of the first 2 years of her life, but she has the rest of her life to look forward to. But older people, sir, now have that taken from them, and it is continuing to be taken from them. And so we have to look at that. I saw that we're trying to do in education some adjustments so that we consider how school was affected and school children were affected when they were out of school, sir. We have to do something similar for older people, sir. It is going to be one of the serious concerns. We have to look, sir, and locate this conversation in many of the wider social determinants, sir. I have asked, people keep telling me about children being left, leaving their parents at the hospital. It is a concern. We saw it too even when we did Harrison Point. And there are a number of reasons for that, so I make no excuses for anybody. But I know that I've had conversations, sir, in my official role as minister, and that there's some children who felt that they were hard done by their parents and hardly have a relationship. There's some who have left the country, left the house, looking for better circumstances, sir. There's some who are in the house and have no desire to help whatsoever. And then there are some who don't know how, because dealing with Alzheimer's and dementia is not an easy thing. And sir, many people now have to be able to deal with that, sir. And many of us, sir, all of us must concern ourselves now with this maltreatment of the elderly. It is too commonplace. People being taken advantage of, they're getting their checks taken away, they're being cheated of their houses. You know, many times, sir, you will find that you can't find when the older person is alive and in need of help. You cannot find a boy or a woman that claims to be a relative. This is a fact. You will know you're a lawyer. I keep telling you all these things. I feel sometimes I could just talk to my colleagues, and a social worker. But you know, you will find that you can't find a boy. We are all MPs. Or a woman to come and help the old person in the house. They don't want to claim relationship at all. Let that person die. People crawl out to the woodwork. They don't know that they are the closest to the person in blood. So they want to claim the house. They want to claim the pension. In some cases, sir, some stay, and I've seen this. They only help them as long as they got money. When the money runs out, they're gone, especially if the house is not their house, it's a rental house. Sir, and we are seeing these things. That is why this legislation that we are bringing, sir, is important, but that is why the legislation, I believe, sir, has to be wide.
Honourable members, some of them apply for an order in the High Court for receivership as long as the parents have assets.
Absolutely.
Who would have done nothing at all for them during the formative years, during their productive years. But all of a sudden, as soon as some of them show signs of dementia, relatives come from nowhere to apply for a High Court order for receivership, then to give them ultimate control over the assets of the person, sir. That is also occurring.
And sir, that is going to be addressed in the legislation. Sir, this thing is so serious. This thing is so serious. And if we consider, sir, that the average Barbadian is now 46, 47, the data tells us. In 20 years, at this rate, unless Barbadians start to have a lot of children, and I would never want this to be the case, unless somehow we have less older people, then the average age is not going to get lower unless we get an immigration policy, sir, that allows us to bring in people, sir. We are dealing with a situation that is going to cripple this country, cripple this economy. And at the same time, none of us in this room should feel comfortable knowing that older people are being taken advantage of daily in Barbados, sir. And, you know, from time to time, you might find one or two people who are willing to help, sir. My colleagues, particularly my colleague to my right, the Honourable Minister in the Ministry of Finance, tells me that I need to be more aggressive in relation to the people who may have come at me recently. And I said to him, I am more interested in building bridges than burning them. And that in the work to save the elderly people, sir, this is not about me. It cannot be about ego, and it surely cannot be about politics, sir. This work is just too important. And I feel, sir, all of us, sir, are creeping up. You know, I look at a picture of myself in 2017, or early 2017, late 2016, a few months after I'd won the nomination to serve in the Barista Party, sir, as a candidate. And I look at myself now in the mirror, and I do not know how in 6 years a man could age so badly. Well, not badly, age well, but age a lot, I think. But we all have aged. You look in the mirror, you may not see it day to day, but you look in the mirror. 6 years from now, sir, another 10 years from now, if we're lucky and we're still here, we are all now approaching that age where we're all going to be elderly. It's happening every day. You know, we are barely here for a moment, sir. And therefore, sir, none of us should feel comfortable when this is happening. And so there are a number of things that I feel that we have to be able to do, sir, to be able to address this. I feel knowledge and education is part of it. I've asked my staff to start an education program. Let us talk about the elderly, but also let us capture some of their stories before they're gone. You know, the reason that we're rushing to the hospital, the Honourable Member for St. Andrew a few months in here gave a masterpiece of a presentation. A masterpiece where he spoke about medicines from traditional medicines from bushes and stuff in Barbados. That old Barbadians used to use to heal themselves. That worked. We are now running the risk, sir, of losing all of that. We have to capture it. We have to work with the minister responsible for information, but we have to be able to capture some of these stories, sir. So we have concerns with accessibility, and it's for older people, and the truth is, there's an unfortunate correlation, particularly in Barbados, between the number of people who are older and the number of people who are disabled, physically disabled, meaning that they've lost a leg predominantly. Because many Barbadians, as they get older, you know, but they say Barbados is the amputee capital of the world. But the truth is that while the amputation may not necessarily be the best step, is that many Barbadians are dealing with diabetes, and many present way too late. Many present way too late, sir. A colleague sent me a photo of an older man in a house, and the family trying to decide if to carry this man to the doctor or not. And you don't even have to be reasonable. You would have to be crazy to look at the picture, sir, to look at this man's foot and not say this man has to go to the hospital. Like, you don't have to be a doctor. But by the time I'm sure he goes to the doctor, I am pretty sure that he finds himself in a situation where even the best doctors will be challenged to save his foot. And I'm just saying, sir, there are things that we can do in Barbados, sir, to be able to prevent this. And that is why I feel this education component is going to be so important. So I could talk about financial concerns, sir, about NAS, about welfare. I mean, forever I won't do that today, sir, because that would take me a whole hour. But I just feel there are gaps in our provisioning. An old man came to see us at the consultation we had on Sunday, and he said to me, he worked, he didn't pay enough contributions. You know how it goes. He didn't do enough to pay contributions to get contributory pension, but he paid some. But because he paid some, and because of his situation working, he doesn't get non-contributory pension, so he doesn't get contributory, and he gets no non-contributory, and he's caught in the unfortunate middle, and he's asking me if there could be some kind of, I want to use the word he used. He didn't say relief, but that's what he meant.
There's an application for a grant, so he gets a grant.
Yeah, they get a grant, but
And
he
he has
gets a
to apply-
one-off,
yes,
a
but then he
one-off
has-
10,000.
Then he has to apply to the board, which has a discretion in relation
Sir,
to that.
I must tell you that I wrote the board, sir. In fact, sir, I will leave that alone, but I've written the board on people who were so close to the 500 threshold. So close that you could count it on one hand. And they wrote me back and told me no. Anyways. Mr. Speaker, sir, I would move off. I told you NAS is one of those ones, sir, that I feel we really got to sit down and rethink it. And I know for sure NAS has its challenges because, as I said, most of us are aging. Very few people are working now, and we have a dependency ratio that is skewed because we have so few people working, providing for an older population as well as a younger population. So I understand the burdens, but I also feel, sir, that for those who are already old, who may not have had the benefit of the level of education that I think we need to bring, sir, there has to be, the word wasn't relief that he used, or pardon, but something of that nature, sir. Just a conversation worth having. Mr. Speaker, sir, there are those as well, sir, I'm skipping a lot of what I was going to say, but there are those as well, sir, who are, as I began by talking, sir, about Barbados needs to do more for its older population, and Barbados isn't doing enough. Sir, and the numbers don't lie. The numbers don't lie. Well, first of all, we're building a $100 million geriatric hospital to replace an old one. This government, you all heard the Minister of Finance this morning, the Honourable Member for the Minister in the Ministry of Finance, the Honourable Member for St. Michael South Central, going through the numbers, speaking about the fact that we launched the elder care program in the middle of an experience that was crippling other people. So I know the numbers don't lie. and that people got access to home help all during COVID. I want to thank the NAB workers, sir. They worked every day during COVID and are working now. Sir, at one point in Barbados, you would recall, sir, that the world is so ridiculously biased and unfair. You would remember, sir, there were points where we could not even get gloves, and all the PEP was being taken for other people. They couldn't get gloves. They could hardly get masks, the right mask. So these workers were still going to work, putting themselves at risk when, due to no fault of their own, they could not get the necessary equipment, sir. I want to commend them as real heroes, the workers in the National Assistance Board, sir. But, sir, you know, the numbers don't lie. So if you look at the estimates that were laid this morning, sir, some people may be quick to run to the estimates and start talking nonsense. Because last year, you will see 14.8 million given to National Assistance Board. And this year, under that same head, you would see 13.257. So last year, National Assistance Board got $14.8 million in total. That was to do NAB's work, and that was to do the home health work, sir. And it was more money than they normally get. Just so you know that this government has been given more money than any other government ever for older people. So when they talk, the numbers don't lie. This government has given more support for older people than any other government. But if you go to the numbers, sir, you will see $14.8 million last year. And this year, a person who wants to make an unfortunate and ill-informed, uninformed comment might say that we only give 13.257. But that was for NAB alone. This year, sir, we split it. So when they got 14.8 last year in total, this year we're giving 2.5 plus 9.6, which is a total of 22.9. So compared to 14.8 million last year, the government is giving $22.9 million to the NAB this year. Who dare tell me that this government is not serious about looking after older people, sir? The numbers do not lie. Our numbers here suggest, sir, that it is clearly well over a 50% increase. Well over a 50% increase in the money that goes to the National Assistance Board this year, sir. Because we recognize, sir, that there is a challenge before us, sir, and you have to put your money where your mouth is. And if you analyze the records of the former government, sir, and you know, I really don't like to talk politics on health, or on elderly, on children, but when you're talking, sir, look at the numbers. And that this government is making a significant contribution, sir, to be able to help people, sir. I also feel, sir, that as we try to tackle this problem, it has to be, because it is a multi-dimensional issue, it has to be a multifaceted response. Sir, I wouldn't know how to stand here and tell you that we don't have a relationship with BART, because that would be a lie. We always had a relationship with BART, but the persons in BART would tell you that I've made it my business, sir, to deepen that relationship. In fact, sir, when the ministry presents during the course of the estimates, you will see that we've created this system, sir, where the new orientation of the ministry must be about partnership, because the government can't do all. But that through our partners, we can do a lot of work to be able to help people. And BARP is a strategic partner, sir, in this relationship. BARP is doing such good work on behalf of older people in this country, sir. I also want to thank the Seroptimist Club for the work that they're doing too, sir, to help older people. I have to thank the Homeless Alliance, sir, led by, permit me to say, Kimar Safi, sir, and the work that he is doing as well, sir. So there's many people doing good work. The Alzheimer's Association, and all these people, sir, are now very close partners to the ministry to be able to do this work, so because we cannot do it on our own, sir. I feel, sir, that we have to look at health, we have to look at the social sector, we have to look at the legal sector, sir. We have to work with the grassroots organizations, sir, because at the end of the day, nobody don't know people like the people who live around them. The grassroots organizations, sir, that for some reason we continue to keep out of the policy debate. And that, sir, I feel that the conversation should never be that low level of intensity of partnership, where, you know, people say we partner when they give you a call and say, you know, we do a policy, here's a copy. Nah, it has to be that the people are at the table when the policy is being written. That is how this elderly policy is written, sir. From the very beginning, sir, working with all of our partners to make sure that it happens, sir. And, sir, very quickly before I speak to one other thing, sir, I want to talk about our mindset. the mindset, sir. Because something is wrong with our mindset, sir. On the one hand, sir, we all know that we are going to get old. We all know it. Old age, if you're lucky, sir, is not one of those things that creeps upon you, sir. If you're lucky, you live. You live. To get to 70 years, you have to live for 70 years. It is almost too simple. To get to 80 years, you have to live for 80 years. Yet we find ourselves caught off guard when we get old. And sir, I think we have to create a system to make it easier for people to plan for their old age, sir. So many of us in this parliament, people feel that politicians live large, you know, but many of us in this parliament, when this thing is done too, will find ourselves in this same situation. So I'm speaking to my colleagues too. Plan for your old age. Buy an insurance plan if you could afford it. You know, invest in something that at least you could sell your car if you need to. Because getting old is not easy. You have to plan for it, sir. But more importantly than putting the burden on the old people, sir, I want to talk to the children and the family members. Like, we have a responsibility to look after our older people. It is as simple as that, sir. We have a responsibility to look after our older people. So I took my mother to the hospital a few months ago, maybe. A few months now, just before independence. And we spent some time at the hospital, that's the truth. And while I was there, sir, the number of older people who were there by themselves. By themselves. You hear? I mean, you see them walk into A&E all alone. You see them outside waiting by themselves. And I'm not talking now about care at the hospital. I'm talking about having to make their way there by themselves. One older person told me she was there, sir, for a while, and nobody didn't come and get her. But the hospital, thank God, sir, will give them a little tea. I'll make sure that the people who were there long get a little something. You know, we criticize Barbadians or Barbadian institutions, but these institutions sometimes do things that others won't do. You know, I tell myself, sir, if I had to catch COVID, I would rather catch COVID in Barbados than any other place in the world. And that is the truth. But these old people would get a cup of tea sometimes, they would get something to snack on sometimes, but the people who left them, sir, just there by themselves. And if you know, sir, my mother is still fairly lucid. I mean, she's probably listening, so my mother is very lucid, very clear in thought, very together. But even sometimes, sir, when you hear, my mother had to get about 7 different medications. About 7. Take these 2 in the morning, take these 3 at a certain time. It's confusing. So the next day I'm talking to her and she's telling me, you know, I can't remember if they say to take these ones in the morning or take the... Then some people don't go and make a choice. Either they can choose not to take them at all, or they can choose to take them as they don't remember them and put themselves also at risk, sir. That experience at the hospital, sir, requires that somebody is there to help them, sir. And no matter how much hand-holding the nurses do or the doctors do, somebody. And I feel, sir, that there's going to be a point where this is going to become a role of the state, too. I know the state can't do everything, but I feel we're going to have to put it in place now because our traditional mechanisms of care are so broken that maybe the state is now going to have to take responsibility for putting a person maybe at the hospital or polyclinics just to be able to... We created it, the name that we created, Honourable Member, like a patient advocate, sir, but particularly for elderly persons. In our planning, we call them by a different name, but particularly for elder persons, sir. And then the Prime Minister and I discussed this thing called a time bank, where you put in time, like where we're creating a model, I'm going to bring it to Cabinet soon, where if you put in time taking care of the older persons or somebody in your community, you generate credit. And that later on in life, then you get that credit back, somebody has to help you. But it forces, in a way, people to start thinking about giving. And it's sad that you got to force people to give, but, sir, that is the reality of the world that we live in. You got to force people to look after their own family. It is regrettable, but it is what it is. And, sir, if you create that time bank model, it is not finally, the architecture of it is not fully defined, but I know you put in time, and later on in life, you get back that time and more. And that, sir, might allow us to create a system where people are more willing to help. So lastly, sir, I just want to close by saying, of course, we have to look at a community-based care model, but I want to close by saying that at the end of the day, sir, first and foremost, I am an MP, elected by the people of St. Michael South to serve the people of St. Michael South. First and foremost, I never forget it. I made a pact, sir, with my constituents that I was going to do my best every day to make sure that their issues are my issues and that I give voice to their concerns, sir. There is no way that I could go back to Beaconsfield, sir, in my constituency and say that I spoke on a debate on this geriatric hospital and not talk about the concerns of the people in Beaconsfield. Because the people in Beaconsfield, sir, you've seen it in the paper. It's not new. They've been in the paper. They've been on the radio, sir. They've expressed their concerns because with the moving of the geriatric hospital and our plans, there may be a need to move some people. And, sir, the Minister of Housing, the former two Ministers of Housing and the current Minister of Housing, sir, we've all been in conversation about how best we can accommodate them. I feel, sir, that we need to have more conversation with the people in Beaconsfield to be able to allay the fears of the people in Beaconsfield, sir, to talk to them, sir, about what it is that we are doing, sir, and to present them with some options. A lot of this conversation has started. The Honourable Member for Christchurch West, I think when he was Minister, he came. The Honourable Member, former Member for St. Andrew, yes, when he was Minister, he came. I've had the member for St. George South and St. Michael South probably more than any other MP. So they understand, sir, that we are working on it, sir. But at the end of the day, sir, you know, people need to be, during these very difficult transitions, people are going to need conversations, sir. We have given them the assurance, and they have every comfort that the Minister of Housing will make sure that they're comfortable and well attended to, sir. But I know that they are asking me now what is going to be the final decision on where they're supposed to go and so on, sir. And I think that the Prime Minister has also given me her assurance that nobody will be disadvantaged. I think, sir, we did a poll, and most people are okay. But there are some people, sir, that I know are going to require further conversation and further consultation, sir. Even as we move the geriatric hospital from St. Michael South, where it, sir, is old and really needs to be, you know, the new model is obviously a lot better. But the people in between, sir, also need some conversation. So, sir, I want to support this, obviously, this resolution, sir, that is before the House. I want to thank the Honourable Member for St. George South for bringing it, sir. I look forward to us being able to build a new geriatric facility to help the people, the older people in this country, sir. You know, some of us in this room end up in that same facility. So we better be thankful that there's going to be a brand new facility. You know, my daughter, sir, is 18 the other day. And I said to her, you know, I suspect, because she's not one fond of hugs and stuff, I said to her, you know, I suspect when I get older, I may have to find myself in an institution. She denied it, promised to take care of me, sir, as I have taken care of her. But if I have to end up in an institution, I am thankful that it is a brand new institution built by this government, sir, to care to our older people. With these words, sorry, thank you very much.
Honourable Member for Christchurch West.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for my opportunity to join this debate. First, let me say I fully, unreservedly support this resolution for the acquisition of this land so that we'll be able to build this new geriatric hospital facility at that location. Let me also say, as it's a cognate debate, that I also support the sale on the converse side to the owners of this land, because sometimes, Mr. Speaker, you know, you have to rearrange your assets. And oftentimes you have to look at what is adjacent to you and then see what the other side wants and find a compromise. And that is what the two of these resolutions put together, is to be able to find a compromise situation where on one side, the owner of the land that we want to be able to develop, which is, it's not all of the land that belongs to people, but a portion that belong to the people that we're then selling land onto on the other side. And this is an attempt to find a compromise between the state and the owner of a part of that land. And I salute the Minister for getting us to this stage. This is something that I had started when I was Minister, and getting us now to the stage that we can come to a final solution on this matter. So this is definitely a good step in the right direction. And more importantly, this will be an iconic building on the ABC Highway. Let's make that clear. This building will be 142,727 square feet in phase 1 and 35,114 square feet in phase 2, giving an opportunity for 400 patients to be able to be housed here. And let me say clearly, I don't know if any honourable members have visited the current geriatric hospital, but the current geriatric hospital is designed in what we call open plan wards. What does that mean? That means that all of the beds are in a large space. Some of the wards, about, I'd say, 50-70% the size of this room. And they have a small area for bathroom facilities, hardly any place for people to store anything that they own, no closet space, none of the modern facilities that you would expect in a modern hospital. All of that is going to change. This new facility will be built to the highest expectable standards that you can get in a hospital today. What does that mean? That means rather than large open wards, there'll be smaller pod-like wards of 6 beds, as opposed to a large facility. That means each pod in its own will have its own bathroom facility. That means that patients will have an opportunity to store their clothes, store their knickknacks, have a place to put their pictures of their loved ones. That means that there'll be piped oxygen into the rooms, near the beds where necessary. That means there'll be better electrical outlets. So people in modern days, just because somebody is 80, don't mean they don't have a cell phone, though. They got to charge the cell phone, charge the iPad, because people in the modern world expect these facilities now. So all of those things will be built in. Not to mention the fact that we'll have exercise lanes so that people will be able to get out of the beds and go and walk around the facility. A pool that people will be able to do aqua exercise within the pool with those kind of water weights and things like that to keep people active rather than just a warehouse as they used to do in Victorian times. This is a rethink, an improvement to make the lives better for the people that will be there at the geriatric hospital. But it went further than that, Mr. Speaker. In addition to having better facilities for the patients, better facilities for staff, better accommodation for staff, better nursing facilities, better offices for the sisters that are responsible for the wards, better facilities to get rid of waste, sluice gates and sluice rooms. Because whether we like it or not, there have to be bedpans that have to be emptied and they have to be done in an enclosed environment. So all of these things will make a better facility for staff, better facilities for the patients, better facilities also for the environment, because it will have a water treatment facility, better water tank storage, because if you lose the water system, that doesn't mean you can't lose a water system and not have 400 patients and don't have good storage facilities for water. And then all the opportunities to treat the water and then use that for irrigation, not only of the grounds, but also in the grounds of botanical gardens next door as well. This is a holistic plant designed for a modern Barbados facing a future, and it is an iconic building that Barbadians can all be well proud of when it is done. It will be a fantastic opportunity, not only adding to be able to provide a service for our people, adding to the growth of the economy, because it means capital works being done, so obviously getting growth in the economy, adding to jobs during construction, 300 odd jobs during construction, and then 400 going to 500 jobs then, working three shifts for people who will be working in there, from staff, from maintenance staff, to medical staff, to support staff, warehousing, all of these things, making it a total ecosystem that will benefit the people of Barbados. So I am fully in support of this. I'm fully in support. I think that is relatively cost effective. When I work out the square footage, it is certainly within reason, considering that it is a hospital with all of the infrastructure needs of a hospital, and still coming in at a good price for the people of Barbados of $100 million odd for the size and all of the facilities and infrastructure that's going into it. Another thing that we're doing is it's going to have an on-site generation plant using natural gas, as opposed to using any stored hydrocarbons. And then on top of all of that, we're going to have photovoltaic systems on the roof as well. So everything has been thought of, built to the highest standards to resist hurricanes, resist earthquakes, all the engineering, all the infrastructure, the foundations, all the way through, fully thought out, well proportioned, well organized. And the biggest thing about hospitals, Mr. Speaker, that a lot of people don't think of, there will be room for expansion on both sides of it as well. Because whether we like it or not, whenever you build a facility like this, you're always looking for expansion, and you always find yourself boxed in. Even the current facility, no room for expansion. Certainly doesn't have room for 180 parking spots. I don't know if you've ever tried to park down there, but you're parking on the side and scotching in. No room for expansion. So in addition to all of these things, there's going to be room for expansion at this facility as well. So everything, I've actually looked at this project, Mr. Speaker, not to see what was good, but to see if I could find fault in it. To see if I could find fault. To see if, what could I look at that could criticize this? And I found great difficulty finding fault, because I found that it touched every single aspect of what I would expect in a new modern hospital looking to the future. If there was only one thing I would have to say, that the traffic situation is something that we may have to look at, because already there's traffic congestion in that area, and we may have some traffic issues because of the proximity to the roundabout and that sort of thing. Apart from that, the whole development itself, how the development is designed as a totally self-contained ecosystem, if you like, that can sustain itself with electricity, can it sustain itself with water, can it sustain itself with sewage, all of those things give an opportunity for the patients to be able to enjoy the latter years of their life. Everything has been thought through and gone into, and it is a commendable project for the people of Barbados. Day rooms, so that people aren't always only on their beds as they are on the current facility, but have an opportunity to go and socialize, play games, intermingle and receive visitors, and visit the bathrooms and visit the facilities as well, all within this system. A tremendous design and a wonderful project. And I look forward to the groundbreaking, which will happen very, very soon. You remember for Christchurch, East Central would have said that he's getting $30 million for them to start, and I commend that. Because once we get that money, we can get all of the final works done, and start all of the infrastructure works, getting the foundation done, getting all the things put in place, so we can get this building going. I am proud today, Valentine's Day of 2023, to be able to say that this Parliament has recognized the need to take care of our elderly people, and to take care of them at the highest standard and the highest level that they deserve, because they're the people that built this country, and nothing can be too good for the people that built this country that we have, Barbados. Nothing can be too good. So as long as we continue to do the best we can for the people of Barbados, then I know that they will continue to stand by us. Mr. Speaker, I'm opposed.
Honourable Member for St. Michael East.
Mr. Speaker, first of all, let me ask for your permission to speak. I'm also glad that my sister from St. Michael's Central, South Central, also grant me permission to speak, because I think she was up before me. But I have to enter this discussion about this arms house. People in here talking about hospital and glorifying this place. This place is a dump. And it has been a place of abandonment for black people for a long, long time. It has all the features of a concentration camp. If you even enter it from the outside, when you go inside, nothing of a recreational nature is there. Senior citizens sitting and watching walls. I really believe that from the time we have self-government, all the leaders of all the governments that never focused their attention on this Beckers Road so-called hospital. That a hospital? That is not a hospital. Nobody don't believe that that is a hospital. If the chances are that a senior citizen likely to live another 5 years, from the time the ambulance or a car pick up a senior citizen and say, I am carrying you to Beckers Road Hospital. She say, you mean the arms house? You can't have a debate in here without the word that the common human beings in this country use in order to refer to that place. And when you turn the gate, the prison got greater aesthetics on the outside or on the inside than Beckers Road Arms House. I am glad to know that the government has made a decision, at least to move our elderly people out of mainstream society, and that is providing that they're at that stage where they're better off in what is called a genuine hospital than if you keep them within the community. So nobody can fault the justification for the removal of our elderly, because they're somebody's parents or grandparents. And it is not easy even to visit that place to look for a relative. It's not even easy. When you shed tears when you're going to visit. Regardless if you're here, you're going in there. Here's the last resort. You know the last resort. After that, there's no other place but the Westbury Cemetery. It has nothing in there to give anybody any sense of hope of an expansion or an extension of their lives. As soon as you go in there, everything truncated. You're going to the Westbury Cemetery shortly. Not even Coleridge. That is a place that I am glad to hear that this government, and I want to compliment the ministers, I want to compliment the cabinet, I want to compliment the Prime Minister for making this important decision. I also believe that closer evaluation or assessment, whichever word is most appropriate in the English language in these circumstances, should be done before any person goes to that place. Sometimes they go there, there's not even a necessity for medicine. They're not going to get any medicine when you get there. The people just count the time, just count the hours. But when you hold people in the communities across Barbados, that home health service is really a real modern approach to how we should treat to our senior citizens. The senior citizens, they have the experience, most of them that are there will tell you, they have an opportunity to interact with the home health workers. It's not just going and cleaning around the facilities or in the facilities. It's the communication. That communication is a form of therapy too. It still keeps the brain active for a long time. And you don't have that, from my observation, at the geriatric hospital. You don't have that kind of interaction because the few people in the staff don't have enough time to sit and engage in conversation. But we've been putting in a number of services that senior citizens can still remain active. And if you continue with this perception that what you have, even in terms of the labeling of it, if you consider this thing to be a hospital, then you believe there's nothing wrong with what you had. So I would hope that the thinkers, not just the architects, I would hope that the architects were also influenced by modern thinkers in terms of the providing of the infrastructure of the institution so that senior citizens will be able to go to a new facility, and in that new facility, we will have both a physiotherapy unit. You know what it is to get up every morning, sit down, and drop to sleep, sitting down, but the same spot that you went on mornings, the evening you drop to sleep on the same spot. People need to, some little thing, I don't think they need to have dumbbells or anything down there, but you need to have something for physiotherapy and recreation in those facilities. And the other thing is, even if you don't have staff, we should have some special arrangement where schools, every day, schools should be visiting that institution and sitting and talking, because they bring them in contact with reality, you know. If you survive long enough, you're most likely to get here. And they could be in there talking, getting experiences with the old grandparents. When I say grandparents, not necessarily blood related, but having an opportunity to speak to them. I've seen people who went into that institution. I don't want to call it house all the time, but that's really is for me all it now, right? It was demolishing, long. But I've seen people who entered that institution having a reservoir of talent, great retention, you know. I went there one time to look for a gentleman, and this man was an encyclopedia on West Indian cricket. And he brought me from the 1950s. He told me about all the outstanding cricketers, black cricketers, which I had an interest in. He spoke to me about all of these people. And he could actually relate every match that the West Indies play, either the NCC or England. He can explain to you the difference in the spirit of the people. This was a man that had talent. And if at least journalists or some writer could have gone into that place and write the things that he said, it'd be an interesting text for young people as well. I am assuming that there are many that went there that was very much like him, but he had no way to live. The only reason he was in there is because he had no way to live, and the family who was around, they wanted him for whatever reason. I didn't go into all those details. So he ended up inside this place, abandoned in the place, and they believe that he died when he was in there. So we sometimes, even when we're developing these institutions, a greater detail of the sociology of the environment and the damage that has been done to these people going into that institution, that you design it. I don't ever think that we design anything. I don't think we design it. I don't know when that hospital was constructed there. I don't even know what were the kind of thoughts being expressed about having this specific hospital there. But I know it's pre-independence. I know it is also pre-self-government. I don't believe that the kind of application that we required of us in now constructing a new hospital for our people, that they would have applied themselves in the manner that they did. Because I told you it is a concentration camp. But now when we replace it, we must have something far more modernized, far more suitable for human beings to go to. And any person that is still able-bodied, nobody that is able-bodied should find themselves in that place. And I think a few years ago, this government was thinking about senior citizens villages. And we took the model from Eden Lodge. There is a senior citizen village that was run by a seroptimist in Eden Lodge. And we took the model from them, and we went and we opened up Vauxhall Senior Citizen Village. And you have no complaints about those entities. Vauxhall Senior Citizen Village allow for a senior person to go in to the village. And if you want to leave during the course of the day, you just inform them that you're going out. These are people that are saying, lucid then. They can go look for their families and come back. And I don't know exactly how the service runs now, but in some cases, those people and their families provide even the nutritious meals. And in some cases, if they don't have, the NAB provides the service. And I thought that one of the things that in fact, all along with building this hospital, I remember when I was Minister of Social Transformation, there was lots of land to the northern side of the Vauxhall Senior Citizens Village. And I was trying to persuade the then Prime Minister that we should extend the village a little further and have that entire pocket up there being an area for senior citizens in Barbados. So lots of those people, as I said, I remember a popular supermarket owner, and if parliamentary representative for St. Thomas was here, Ms. Ford, very early she asked me to help out a gentleman. He was probably a man of means, but family issues at a certain age. No, there's nowhere a person like that should find themselves any place that even looks similar to Becker's Road. It should not happen. It should not happen. So I think that we're making, this is a positive decision that we have made. The rationale for it is sound, cannot be questioned. I don't know who else would even think about questioning. Because I said the indictment should, sir, you know about indictments and so on. The indictment should have come on us since the 1950s. You can't take over self-government from colonial powers who treated us as less than how we ought to be treated. Not as bad as their ancestors treated us, where they even describe us as not being human beings, but they didn't think much neither. So they never put any appliances, any mechanisms in place at that building. And some of us, look, we have conversations every day. And everybody don't talk to. This called Black Rock, the so-called Black Rock Hospital, the Madhouse. Let's call that place the Yams House. The only hospital, we said we already got one hospital in Barbados, you know. It's only when it is convenient to sound nice and humane that people begin to talk these different hospitals that we have. A hospital must not become a concentration camp, where people that still lucid can't walk out of the gate and come back, or where you can't come and carry out your relatives, you got to apply to the Ministry of Health, and all of that. Oh, a man that is sick, and the Ministry of Health got to make an assessment, put the man in there or the woman in there. Something wrong in the system. And the people who are involved in social policy and the social sciences should be having a debate about not the size of the hospital alone or what it costs, the new hospital, but they should be having a serious debate about the kind of programs that we need to have at the new facility. You're not just constructing or erecting walls. We are thinking in terms of how to make people feel that they are wanted. People must believe that people respect them. I even believe, and it's not because of my age, but people also believe. People don't like to be called mad. People don't like to be called old people. Disabled people don't like to be called imbeciles, nothing so. And that's what I'm saying to this government, this government must create its own vocabulary, a civil vocabulary. If we are involved, especially in recent times, I've been hearing the party talking more about going back to transformation and finding a way of appearing to be more, we're not just doing things because they used to be done before and somebody make it sound good by saying this was the best practice. The best practice sometimes is not the best practice for us. Sometimes we got to think and say this government must put its own stamp on how this society ought to go in the future. And you can't do it without the people coming along with you. But I really want to suggest that we still have to look at decentralization as a form of complementing any new institution, any new hospital, and having if it's a hospital now, let it be a real genuine hospital and not nothing like what we had before. But I believe that what we have to do is to also try our best to keep our people in the communities, allow them to have the interaction, and allow them to have almost 24 hours in the service of the family and the people in the community. And I believe that we will see that the life estimacy for the population will continue to extend. I'm looking forward to getting about 170 years on Earth. I know you would like to think about the same. Good social services, even without the science, I believe could carry us much longer. Those 3 scores stay. Those 3 scores steady say that about 100 or something plus. So I'm looking forward to that. And I want to compliment the ministers, not only Minister of Housing and the Super Minister of Housing and the Minister that is responsible for the elderly in Barbados, but I want to compliment the government in general for this effort to bring about not just true physical transformation, but also social transformation for the good of the society itself. Thank you very much.
Honourable St. Michael, South Central.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just have a few thoughts to share as I rise to support these resolutions. I think that this one comes today at an interesting time in the afternoon after we have discussed the fiscal framework and the role of procurement in helping to expand the economic enfranchisement potential of the country. I think at $100 million, this is a good example of a government procurement package that can engage many actors and be made available to many service providers, and also be made very transparent in terms of how that is done. So I think this presents a good opportunity to so do. I'm also encouraged to see the way that this is being approached, in the sense that we have a compulsory acquisition of land, and at the same time, in some way corresponding sale of property that allows government to tidily carry on its business. I note that the estimates that were laid today contain a schedule of a list of properties that were compulsorily acquired, which is also encouraging, which also shows us that government intends to meet its commitments, that government intends to make good all of those outstanding matters with respect to the compulsory acquisition of land that has gone before. But I am encouraged to see that this is tidily done, and that we don't have now a liability outstanding because we have cleaned up these matters and made sure that we are on good ground to go ahead with this project. Now, I'm taking this opportunity, sir, to simply make one intervention with respect to the role of this facility in the medical and healthcare landscape of the country. Those who went before me have done far more than I could in that regard. In particular, the minister who has responsibility for the elderly, who, you know, I said earlier that we come to this place to account to the people and not to brag. But I do have to give the member for St. Michael South encouragement in the work that he is doing in the social services sector, building on the work that was done and continues to be done by the member for St. Thomas. But to say that I like to be taken on a journey, sir, as a Barbadian. I like to see where the path is going. I like to feel that when I get to the end, it's not a dead end, and that I understand what is the plan for the country and for the sectors that are being served by a particular ministry. And I do have that confidence in what I have been hearing from the member for St. Michael South, and he knows that he has my support in these matters. But I will say that while I do, of course, support investing in medical care for the elderly, and one must, I don't see how one could not. And I also support all of the discussion that has come before about other kinds of care that the elderly require that may not be specifically medical interventions. But I also have to say that while we seek to increase our investment in medical care for the elderly, we need to also invest differently in care of people before it gets to a stage where we have unmanageable conditions that it takes more money and more investment to treat and to care for. And some Barbadians, like the person that the member for St. Michael South referred to, who had now come to an advanced stage of illness, if we were making interventions or if we invested more or differently in the kinds of interventions that would have stopped him from getting there, then we would have to invest less at that stage. And I don't want us to lose sight of those priorities that we made, where we said, for example, that we would have something that we had called at the time a wealth for health approach, meaning that if you are living with some NCDs, so for example, diabetes, or if you are pre-diabetic and you are put on a course of medication or you are put on a course of exercise or a nutrition plan and you are able to show that you are adhering, that you are complying, then you get some kind of rebate, you get some kind of payment for the fact that you are putting the government in a position, or putting the taxpayers really in a position, to be able to avoid further costs later. So I don't want us to lose sight of the fact that we also have to consider the investments that we're making in people's health all through their life cycle, especially before problems set in. And I thought it was important to keep that at the forefront of our minds as we consider this facility. But sir, I rise to briefly consider this resolution and what is contemplated here in a broader context. And when I understood that this property, this development was going to be close to the Botanical Gardens, I thought that this was perhaps a siting that made sense for the recuperation of the elderly. I have to say that I am one of the biggest fans you will find of the National Botanical Gardens. I think that we have realized a space where people are getting value from wide open spaces, people are getting value from community spaces on a scale that I don't think we've seen much before. And I think this is something that we also have to recognize that is important. But I am concerned, sir, about how we continue to make use of lands for investment, even in cases where, how we continue to make use of land for the enjoyment of the public, even in cases where those lands are the subject of private investment. And it is to that I wish to refer today. Because while I support, of course, the erection of this new geriatric facility, close as it does or is intended to lay to the Botanical Gardens that we all enjoy, I am a St. Michael Member of Parliament, sir. And I have the challenge of having very small spaces that we have to make use of. I have the challenge of having issues in St. Michael's South Central, and we've all spoken about these, we do have a challenge with dilapidated and decrepit structures that I know the various ministries are seeking to address and have begun addressing in my own constituency, but that takes up real estate that could be put to good purpose. Overgrown and abandoned lots that similarly take up real estate that could be put to good purpose. And so when we have lands that have been in public use before, but then become the subject of private investment, I have to be concerned. Because just as we had what most of us know as the BET ground, where we had a lot of football and other sporting activities for communities that is no longer in use for these purposes, that would have served a range of constituencies from Christchurch West to Christchurch West Central to St. Michael's Southeast to St. Michael's South Central, that was so perfectly located as to be a sporting ground for all of those communities. Now we have the development at the former Banks Breweries in Wildy, opposite the Flagstaff area, so spanning 2 constituencies. That used to be a key sporting ground and center for the constituencies, for the communities in St. Michael's South Central and others, and in the Pine and a range of constituencies. And I think that we have seen, certainly in my time that I had the privilege of spending, having some responsibility for planning and development, physical planning and development in the country, that we've been able to make use of planning gains. So the mechanism by which, if a private developer comes and is seeking to make an investment, we discuss with that private developer what are some of the public investments that you can make to offset the ecological and other footprint that you're having in the country, meaning you are benefiting from limited public space and public land and many other assets of this country. How will the people in this community and the immediate surroundings therefore benefit from the fact of you coming to make a private investment here? And so the site that is now being developed along Wildy Main Road, the former Banks Breweries, we encourage the investment, we encourage the development. We know that this kind of economic activity means money in people's pockets, either during the construction or during its operation as a commercial center. We would also like to encourage, and I make this appeal from this place today, that we use the tools available to government to discuss with private developers ideas such as having that Banks playing ground remain available to the public of Barbados in some ways so that we can continue to have the kinds of community-based sporting activities that mean young people are able to recreate, they're able to belong to a sporting club, they're able to belong to something, they're able to have a home that they can go to know that football is going to be playing here on a Tuesday and a Thursday. And if there's something happening at home that I don't want to be a part of, I'm going to come here and do a little football scrimmage or come and do some training or something of that sort. We have to be careful to maintain certain public spaces or certain grounds for the purpose of sporting and other recreational activity. Now, sir, right now, we have a Barbados Football Premier League. I have the distinction of being from a constituency that has the 2 teams at the top of that league. Weymouth Fields FC, Britons Hill FC. I'm gonna have to do like the mother in the Super Bowl who had a son on each team. Chiefs and Eagles, half green and half red jacket she had on when she was watching the Super Bowl, because that's how I may have to show up to the final. But I say that to say that Weymouth Wales at one time had 10 players on a Barbados national team in this country. Weymouth Wales has continued to distinguish itself, as has Brennan's Hill and others. Quakers Road, Schilling Square, Your Honor, you will know well, as football clubs. But Weymouth Wales, regrettably, does not have a home ground today.
I remember you used to play on Weymouth B or Weymouth C.
Exactly so. Right. Thank you, sir, for making my job a little bit easier. Right. Because they used to play on Weymouth B. Right. But Weymouth B is now...
Part of you thing again also.
Yes. Is now, we're hoping with the help of the member for St. John, about to be formally handed over to Weymouth Wales Football Club as a home ground. And I think that this is important. And why? Because for years, young men and women, well, women now, because Weymouth Wales now has a women's team, which I think is only fitting. But for years in Carrington Village and surrounding areas, young men in particular came up through that club and knew that they belonged to that. Knew that if they would go to Weymouth B or C, as you say, sir, or even in some cases be able to train on the Gully Hill back in the day, and know that that was where they could get out that energy and get out that frustration and talk to their friends and feel a part of something. And if we do not hold on to some of these grounds and make sure that they serve a purpose which meets our objectives, the objectives that the member for the City of Bridgetown has so clear in terms of making sure that young people stay engaged so that they do not end up in other activities. If we don't do that, if we don't use the tools of planning that are available to us to say to developers, listen, I understand that you have this property and that you're going to use 3/4 of it for this development, I need you to make sure. We don't need to own it or keep it. We don't need to have it all the time. But we need to keep it maintained as a sporting ground for these communities because they are disappearing. They are disappearing all over this country, and we in St. Michael know particularly how tight it is. We can barely find space. The member for Christchurch West Central, to his credit, has been appealing to me to find spaces to do the Clean and Green initiative. And I'm finding small strips of land and trying to figure out if I can put some things for people to enjoy and recreate. It is tight in St. Michael. And so we need to be able to maintain these grounds. Finally, sir, I will say that while we continue this expansion to make sure that lands are put to good use in this country, I have to restate an appeal with respect to the issue of conveyance of title in these same St. Michael constituencies. And to be able to say, as we prepare for estimates, that it cannot be, and I know the member for Christchurch East Central is listening to me, too much of an investment to give to people officially what they de facto already own, what they already have possession of. People who are living on properties 10, 15, 20 years who qualify to be part of that program where the land is conveyed to them. Can we please make sure that this business of fulfilling the promise with respect to urban tenantries, that this business is finished? Because while we, as we should, continue the housing expansion and have a silent housing revolution, I'm asking that we not allow the silence to continue with respect to the conveyance of these properties in the urban areas. Because this is a way, you don't have to build a house and give to these people. They're in a home on land that they want to be able to own, to be able to get value from the asset, to be able to invest in other parts of their lives and their families' lives. And as we continue this expansion of land as we become strategic, as the member for St. George South has been in the master planning of the sector for housing and lands, we need to continue or to complete this business that is our legacy as a Barbados Labour Party. This is our legacy. This is what we created for poor people in urban communities to have something, and we need to complete it. I'm obliged to you, sir.
Honourable member, send yourself.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to bring closure to this debate and basically to just make a few comments in listening to my colleagues who spoke. And first, let me thank the member for St. Michael South, who brought the philosophical grounding, brought us back to earth with respect to the holistic approach to elderly care, and to say to the Lord Chamber and to Barbadians that the hospital is a small part of a bigger elderly care plan. And while I start there, because he also made mention, I don't think he made it on the floor of the House this morning, the fact that a lot of work went into the design, and I thank the member for Christchurch West who went into the micro plans and the details of the hospital itself. And the fact that he started this process as former Minister of Housing, I too want to thank him for his vision as part of this team. But what the member for St. Michael South mentioned, he didn't do it on the floor of Parliament, but I recognize that there was some social workers who weighed in on this design and in terms of the whole aspect of the location and what this hospital should look like. And if one thought that consultation was only along the social partnership, but we recognize that in terms of caring for the elderly, the social workers weighed in heavily on the design, the construction, what they saw as some of the challenges with the old geriatric hospital. And I recognize both the member for St. Michael East and the member for Christchurch West spoke about the open design and the arcade systems that we have at Beckles Road. So I want to thank you, the member for St. Michael South, and your team for weighing in. And I stick, as I close, on the whole holistic approach to elderly care. And again, not only should we be focusing on the geriatric hospital, but focusing on what I called earlier and what the member for St. Michael South spoke about, and also St. Michael East, community-based care in the elderly policy that will come before this House shortly. The age-in-place policy, I think that's the name. And I want to thank you, member, because a lot of work. Also, the member for the city had a little part to play in it as well when he came into office. And we can't forget you, member for the city, because that's how we work as a team. And I know for the little time that you spent there, you too would have weighed in on what you saw as a social worker as well. So I too want to thank you, member for the city. Government just allocated some $3 million to fix the Vauxhall and the Lancaster senior villages. And, you know, these items that I just mentioned, they are all part of the holistic approach and the bigger picture to elderly care in this country. And when you listen to the member, I'm not that member for St. Michael South. He's a social worker, trained at the highest level. And indeed, he brings to this table a level of expertise that I don't think none of us, besides the member, the person sitting in the chair as the speaker, as well, he has that level of expertise as well. And also the member for St. Michael Southeast as well. South Central, sorry. Some of the challenges that the member for South Central mentioned, and I will end off on the whole transfer of lands within the urban corridor territory lands. That is a work in progress, part of the Ministry of Housing, Land Administration policy. And I must say to her, we can say to the people of St. Michael, very soon, in the next financial year, we will have most, if not all, of those lands within the urban corridor and the rural corridor as well transferred to those persons so that they can go to the bank with a title deed and borrow money or say to you, this is my rightful property, and that is what is lacking in this country. Persons have no assets on which they can build upon. And I think those are some of the things that the member for St. Michael South Central spoke about. So, Mr. Speaker, again, this hospital will be a state-of-the-art hospital. And I welcome the initiatives that the member for St. Michael South placed before the House. And I know he would have a say next week in the Well of Parliament during the estimates debate, whether second reading speech or otherwise, to explain to this country what other avenues, whether it is community-based care, it is geriatric care, what his ministry is doing as we transition. And we have transitioned because persons over 65, we are seeing an increase in the population, and I mentioned that earlier. So we cannot at all turn a blind eye to that, and we cannot be what I call static with our policies. We must be fluid, because as the world transitions, and like the member said, all over the world persons are living longer, and our population over 65 is moving from 12% of the population to 25%. And who knows, probably within 2 years' time, we'll transition probably to 30% or 35%. And again, that's why this geriatric hospital, the state-of-the-art hospital, is part of a wider elderly care policy that this government is on a mission to ensure, and to end off, we're on a mission to ensure that Barbados becomes the best place for elderly people to exist, live, work, and enjoy life. And with those few words, Mr. Speaker, I beg that these two resolutions, that this resolution now pass.
Honourable member is number 11 on the order paper, actually. Number 11 on the order paper.
We have number 10, 11? 10 and 11.
Mr. Speaker,
This is number 10.
11 and 12.
No, we did enough. No, because we had changed that because they had it wrong, so we... Question, right?
The question is that order number 10 on the order paper do not pass. All honourable members in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, please say no. Meeting the ayes have it. This resolution stands passed.
Order number 11, sir. In the name of the Honourable Minister of Housing, Lands and Maintenance, to move the passing of a resolution to approve in accordance with Section 28C of the Land Acquisition Act, Chapter 228, the sale of a parcel of land, the property of the state, situate at Lot 13, Lower Estate, in the parcel of St. Michael in this island, that Ed Strong Holdings Limited, a company incorporated under the Companies Act, Cap 308.
Mr. Speaker, I beg that this resolution now pass.
The question is that this resolution do not pass. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Meeting the ayes have it. This resolution stands passed.
Mr. Speaker, recommittal of government notices. Give notice.
Honourable Leader, Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to give notice of a resolution to grant the sum of $47,440,349 from the Consolidated Fund and to place it at the disposal of the government to supplement the estimates 2022-2023 as shown in the supplementary estimates number 4 of 2022 to 2023. I also beg to give notice of a resolution to seek the concurrence of the House of Assembly in the amendments made by the Honourable, the Senate, to the Animal Health and Public Veterinary Health Bill 2023 and the Final Appropriation Bill 2023.
Revert to government business, sir. So this is the order number 13. In the name of the Honourable Leader of the House, to move that the House resolve itself into Standing Finance Committee to consider the grants of sum of money for the service of this island.
Honourable Leader, Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to move that you do not leave the chair and that the House resolve itself into Standing Finance Committee.
The question is that the Speaker do not leave the chair and the House resolve itself in the Standing Finance Committee. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it.
This House is now in Standing Finance Committee.
Order 13A, sir. In the name of the Honourable Minister in the Ministry of Finance and Economic Affairs, to move the passing of a resolution to grant the sum of $47,440,339 from the Consolidated Fund and to place it at the disposal of the government to supplement the estimates 2022 to 2023 as shown in the supplementary estimates number 4, 2022 to 2023, which form the schedule to the resolution. Head 13, Prime Minister's Office, in the amount of $3,932,772.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Sorry.
Honourable Member for Christchurch. East Central.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. My apologies. The order is a little late, so I'll be very brief. You would recall, Ms. Chair, that the government has embarked on a very aggressive program to digitize our records. The sum of monies in relation to the Division of Culture relate to a specific project which is designed to facilitate the digitization of the archives as part of the Reclaiming Our Atlantic Destiny project. So outside of the existing digitization program, which is ongoing within the regular ministries, in order for us to be able to leverage those heritage assets to which I referred to in my earlier presentation, the sum of monies here have been allocated to be able to allow them to be able to get the equipment such that we can advance the work that is critical to digitizing all of the archives such that we can allow, and I know that some work has started already, to allow persons not just to know the history, but to allow for some element of genealogy to take place so that we can trace our roots all the way back through the establishment of Barbados as a colony. And therefore, with those very few words, Chair, I beg to move that Head 13 stand part.
Beg a second.
The question is that Head 13 stand part. All honourable members in favour, please say aye. Honourable members against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Head 15, sir, Cabinet Office, in the amount of $4,895,032.
Honourable Member for Christchurch East Central.
Chair, as you would recall, during the pandemic, a number of persons would have performed human service on the front line. And the sum of monies being requested here is to facilitate the payment of the $500 for the awardees of the humanitarian award as part of the pandemic response. You would recall there was a second ceremony late last year, and therefore the process has started. These additional sums are to cover the additional persons who were awarded the humanitarian award, given the appellate process that had gone out to the public to ensure that those persons who were missed as part of the internal administration, that they were able to be paid the $500 stipend in relation to, or honorarium, I should say, sir, in relation to that. And equally, in relation to what we discussed, certainly with the previous head, the government is also making significant steps to be able to procure the memorabilia, the cricket memorabilia of His Excellency Sir Geoffrey Sobers, as to become part of a national collection, which should serve as an inspiration with respect to our sporting heroes. And so, with those very few words, sir, I beg to move to Head 15 stand part.
Beg to second that.
The question is that Head 15 stand part. All honourable members in favour, say aye. All members against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Head 30, Office of the Attorney General, in the amount of $1,152,523.
Honourable member for St. Joseph.
Mr. Chairman, these amounts that are required by the Office of the Attorney General fall under two sub-programs. Firstly is the new sub-program, the crime prevention program, and of course championed very ably by the member for the city. In this regard, sir, we've needed, because there was no provision for this sub-program at all in the year's estimates, we had to make supplementary provision in order to be able to fund the works of the crime prevention program thus far. And this amount is as shown under program 040. The other one, sir, program 244, is required to further finance the operations of the Barbados Police Service. And with those words, I beg to move that Head 30 stand part.
The question is that Head 30 stand part. All honourable members in favour, say aye. Honourable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Head 81, sir, Ministry of Transport, Works and Water Resources, in the amount of $23,900,924.
Honourable member for St. Michael Southeast.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This sub-program, or this head rather, relates to two sub-programs. The first program, 510, sub-program 495, which relates to tenantry roads, in the sum of $3,245,611. It relates to the purchase of machinery and equipment. We are in the process of embarking on a program to do what we consider some shorter roads that are of the length of 100 meters in length across the island. We've already asked a number of the depots to submit a number of the roads across their districts, which For many of the residents in these areas, obviously they have a number of challenges getting out of their houses. These are not the heavily trafficked roads, but they are roads within communities where when people step outside, sometimes especially in heavy weather, and I see you, Mr. Chair, shaking your head and nodding because I know that particularly in your constituency, this will be of great value to your residents there. But across the communities, as we have done the Parish Speaks programs, we have recognized more and more that there is a dire need not only to do the major road rehabilitation in the heavily trafficked roads, but also to give some relief to persons who are in districts and in communities where it has become very difficult for them having to traverse over muddy areas in order to get access in and out of their houses. And in some cases, we had a nice debate on the elderly this morning. In some cases, the elderly are impacted as well, where in particular when people take sick, you're not able to get the fire trucks into particular communities also. These roads, while short, are going to be developed with the usual standards in terms of engineering. The intention is to ensure that we address some of the drainage issues because we want to put the roads in a position that if we have to also come back to do additional works that we can. We intend to put on the curb and the slipper, and we intend to, for this particular project, to source the equipment, some locally, and obviously we will have to bring in additional resources in order to be able to get the program going. We've been working on getting some of our equipment within the ministry up and running, in addition to being able to take advantage of what is available on island to start the program. But with the list of the roads that we have from the various depots, it is our intention to start to roll out this program even before the end of this financial year and then carry that into the next financial year. I believe some 60 roads have been identified, and that is not the extent of all of the roads that perhaps need doing, but I keep reminding the public that with 30 constituencies, you have to spread the love, and therefore I hope that I can bring good news on Valentine's Day that we intend to start with these 60, but with the intention that we will certainly address a number of other roads across the constituency as constituencies as resources become available in the coming months. I just would want to also mention, Mr. Chair, that we have embarked also on a pothole patching program. This administration continues to listen to the people. I know sometimes it is not as fast in terms of the delivery of addressing the problems as some people would like. We have had some challenges in terms of equipment, in terms of human resources, even in relation to the acquisition of the asphalt as well to be able to do the patching. We've been able to convince the Ministry of Finance to give us some assistance in being able to also acquire some of the material in order to address a number of the potholes across the island. And that program has started and will continue again over the course of the next 2 months. Again, in response to the constant pet peeves that people have been raising in relation to the potholes and the issues of the pace at which the pothole patching has been being addressed by the ministry as well. In relation, therefore, sir, to the second sub-program, which is for highway construction and maintenance, we are asking for the sum of $20,655,313, and this relates to what we have referred to as the National Cleanup Program, a program which started as the Ash Worker Program, but was later extended in order to be able to help us to beautify the island. We would have announced a few weeks ago when we gathered at the gymnasium to be able to speak to workers, not just from MTW, but also from National Housing, that the program, which we've had persons on contract, would be coming to an end at the 31st of March of this year. And as a consequence, we did what I believe no other administration has been able to do in our history, which is to put in place a transformational program whereby we are seeking to transition workers into skills training, particularly because a number of these persons have also a number of other skills besides what they were doing on the cleanup program. And we want to be able to enhance and improve the skill sets that they have. So a number of them were requested to complete forms, to be able to indicate whether they wanted to participate in programs on the Construction Gateway program, whether they wanted to get involved in agriculture, whether they wanted to go into the private sector to be able to work as well within their own private employment as entrepreneurs. And we are therefore putting that program and have started the process of putting the program in place to be able to get those persons to transition from being engaged by the Ministry of Public Works and certainly National Housing Corporation. I can tell you, sir, that 75% of the workers prior to the announcement would have enrolled in the program. Since the announcement, we've had another about 5% complete their forms, because I think they understand that this time it is for real, and therefore I am encouraged by the number of persons who have accepted the opportunities made available to them by the government. There are still some, sir, that have perhaps not completed the forms, and again, I want to appeal to them and to those who know them and know that they haven't completed it to certainly make haste and to sign up those forms so that we have a better understanding of how we can plan for you in terms of helping you to make that transition. We have started classes, I think, from the following Monday in tree trimming. We've started with electrical installation. We've done skid steer programs. We've done the gabion building, plumbing, and many others, sir, that these persons would have identified that they had an interest in. The contractual letters have gone out to them, notifying them of the end of the program. Formally, we have indicated to them that we are ensuring that payments in relation to national insurance are up to date. We have issued the letters to the majority of them as it relates to those terminations so that they understand their rights and responsibilities on the 31st of March. And we are certainly in discussions with NIS to make sure that we do not have a backlog when the 31st of March come in terms of persons being able to avail themselves of unemployment benefits. We have also made available the benefit of communications company to be able to assist them in this exercise, and that is a work in progress. They can ask a number of their questions and queries to the individuals to help transition them through this process, because we understand that everybody is not at the same level, and therefore we appreciate that we need to, in a sense, hold the hands of the very people who have helped to beautify this country over the course of the last few years. In addition, sir, we have been encouraging and have been encouraged by the private sector in that some of them have come forward, some of the companies have come forward with a view to being able to work with us to transition some of the workers once they have been upskilled. And I just want to say thank you to those of the companies who have basically raised their hand and risen to the challenge to be able to assist us with the transition. Ideally, we want to make sure that the persons are properly trained so that they can make the transition a lot more smoothly into private employment as well. The amount, therefore, Mr. Chairman, is for the payment of salaries for these individuals until the 31st of March of this year. And like I said before, it is our intention to ensure that the transition is smooth and to make this type of program a beacon, not just for Barbados, not just for this government, but I think for the rest of the region and the world, that we as a government are prepared to handhold our citizens, particularly in difficult times, and not to just simply terminate a contract, a crash program, and be able to leave them without any clear understanding of what happens next. There will be other opportunities that will come up over the course of the next few months, and we have undertaken to stay in contact with the workers to make sure that we are able to evolve the program as the need arises. So, Mr. Chairman, I therefore beg to move that Head 81 do now stand part.
The question is that Head 81 stand part. All honorable members in favor, say aye. Honorable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Head 82, sir. Ministry of Environment and National Beautification in the amount of $7,023,148.
The honorable member for Christchurch East Central.
Thank you very much, Chair. The sums being appropriated for this program relate to what I suppose now is popularly referred to as the 720 program. As you would recall, sir, this is a program that was started pre-COVID under the Honourable member for St. Michael East. Back then it was 360, and we enhanced it to 720 to aid in the beautification efforts certainly across the country. And therefore these sums are to allow for that program to continue as it has. This is just to bring it to account to continue the beautification efforts that they have started up until now. And so with those very few words, I beg to move that head 82 stand part.
The question is that head 82 stand part. All honorable members in favor, please say aye. Honorable members against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Head 83, sir. Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Nutritional Security in the amount of $6,536,000.
Honorable member for Christchurch East Central.
Thank you very much, Chair. The sums being appropriated was to support the operations for the BAMC, sir, during the year. 5 million of which was specifically related to the capital upgrade of equipment at the Portville factory, which was long overdue, and therefore we expect those repairs to be completed such that ahead of the start of the new sugar crop, that and then knock on wood, sir, that all will go well with respect to the process that will allow us to be able to have a smooth execution of the sugar crop this year. And so with those very few words, sir, I beg to move that head 83 stand part.
The question is that head 83 stand part. All honorable members in favor, say aye. Honorable members against, say nay. Methinks the ayes have it. Honorable member for St. Michael Southeast.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I beg to move that you do now report to His Honor the Speaker the passing of one money resolution in committee.
The question is that I do now report His Honor the Speaker the passing of one resolution in committee. All honorable members in favor, please say aye. Honorable members against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
The chairman of committees has reported the passing of one money resolution in Standing Finance Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to move that this resolution be read a first time.
The question is that this resolution be read here first time. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that this resolution be read a second time.
Seconder. The question is that the resolution be read a second time. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that this resolution be now agreed to.
Questions that the resolution be now agreed to. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. This resolution stands passed.
Order number 14, sir. In the name of the Honorable Leader of the House, to move the passing of a resolution to seek the concurrence of the Honorable the House of Assembly in the amendments made by the Honorable the Senate to the Animal Health and Public Veterinary Health Bill 2023 and the final appropriation 2021 to 2022 Bill 2023.
Honourable Leader, Government Business. Honourable Leader, Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As you're aware, this resolution has been sent back to us by the Honourable Chamber of the Senate, and I therefore move that the House agree to the amendments as proposed by the Honourable House.
The question is that the Honourable House agree to the amendments made by the Honourable the Senate. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it. Honourable Leader, Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I therefore beg to move that this House be adjourned until Monday, the 20th of February at 10 a.m., at which time we will begin the estimates of revenue and expenditure for the year 2023-24.
The question is that this Honourable Chamber be adjourned. Question is that this Honourable Chamber be adjourned until Monday, the 20th day of February 2023 at 10 a.m. in the forenoon. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. All those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it. This Honourable Chamber stands adjourned until Monday, the 20th day of February 2023 at 10 a.m. in the forenoon.